Okay, looks like the recording is started. And if folks can just make sure to mute yourselves while I'm presenting, and then there will be opportunities for us to do group discussions and potentially some breakout groups as well later on in the presentation. But yeah, I'll get started. This is our Bystander Intervention 101 training. My name is Melody. My pronouns are she, her. And I've been working for the Prevention Services Program at VOA for over 2 years now. And I have my master's in social work. And can folks see the slides okay? Yeah.
I can't figure out how to mute because usually the little icon that I see isn't here, but I will try to be very quiet.
Okay, that's okay.
I can go ahead and
Same
mute
here.
for you.
It's at the top, Emily. Look at the top. There's a toolbar.
Okay, there we go. Yay. All right. So the Prevention Services Program is, we really work to equip participants with knowledge, skills, and confidence, which will help folks make healthy decisions. And for the training today, we're here to offer kind of a framework to help you be a helpful bystander, create an environment that encourages help-seeking behaviors, um, to learn from each other, and then also to have some opportunities to practice intervening through scenarios and activities. And then just some housekeeping. Like I mentioned, there will be some interactive group discussions, and you're welcome to unmute or use the chat feature to participate. There will be some activities and role play. You don't have to do the role play, but we always encourage it if folks feel comfortable doing it. And then there will be some sensitive content. So like I had mentioned earlier, if you need to mute your camera or step away, do what you need to take care of yourself. And then you're welcome to ask questions. I'll make sure to give time to ask questions at the end and during group discussion. But if there are any burning questions that come up, like I said, my coworker Lucas is here, so you can pop stuff in the chat or raise your hand if you feel like it's relevant in that moment and you don't want to wait. Okay, so to get started, have any of you seen the TV show called What Would You Do? No? Okay. So this show, What Would You Do, is, thank you, Corky. It shows kind of an example of a bystander intervention. So the producers stage actors in a crowd of non-actors who are unaware that they're being filmed, and then they create problematic scenarios and see how the non-actors slash bystanders react and handle the situation. And then afterwards, they announce to the non-actors that the scenario was staged, and they kind of interview them, and ask them why they chose to intervene or to not intervene. And that's kind of an example, or what we will be talking about today, is bystander intervention and some strategies of how to intervene. In the TV show, the way that folks intervene is not always what we would recommend, but it makes for good entertainment. I think a lot of people seem to enjoy it. And sometimes it can be heartwarming how people react. So, yeah. So the bystander effect is the idea that the more people who are there to witness a situation where someone needs help, the less likely it is that someone will actually intervene. Has anyone experienced this before, or like knows about this phenomenon? I see some head nods. Yeah. I think it's that idea that folks think that maybe someone else will step in and help, and then it kind of ends up that no one steps in and helps. Um, and so with bystander intervention, we are trying to interrupt a behavior, um, you know, of someone who is being harmful to others. Some situations where you'd want to intervene could be racism, like mental health, harassment, discrimination. But there are fears that bystanders have, which is, not being sure of how to intervene, which contributes to that bystander effect, worry that you'll make the situation worse. But really, the goal is to support the person that's being harmed and to avoid further escalation. So, really trying to figure out what the least harmful thing to do is, while also intervening. Um, and in the type of work that you do, I'm sure that you've seen that this can happen to anyone, anywhere, which is why we like to give this training to folks. Um, So there are types of bystanders. There are hurtful bystanders who will kind of escalate the situation, encourage the harmful behavior. There are the helpful bystanders who intervene in a supportive way, try to interrupt what's problematic. Um, and try not to escalate the situation. And then there's passive, where people are aware of the situation, but they don't do anything. And this is that most common type of bystander. A lot of folks just aren't sure what to do, and so they end up not doing anything. So we're going to start off with a quick privilege test, and it's something you may have seen before at some point or done something similar. Um, but what I'll do is I'll ask you to just in your lap hold out your two hands with your palms open and fingers stretched out. And then I'm going to read the prompts here and have you put a finger down if it's what I'm saying is relevant to you. So put a finger down if you've been called racial slurs. Put a finger down if your sexual orientation has been pathologized or referred to as a lifestyle. Put a finger down if it can be challenging to find your clothing size sold locally. Put a finger down if you've been accused of not being able to afford something expensive. Put a finger down if you've ever felt unsafe walking alone at night. Put a finger down if your gender is not an option on some legal forms. Put a finger down if you've been profiled by the police. Put a finger down if you are not a US citizen. Put a finger down if English is not your first language. Put a finger down if you have visible or invisible disabilities. Put a finger down if you cannot walk into most spaces, assuming there will be other members of your race represented. And put a finger down if your gender identity has not been represented by a US president. So notice how many fingers are still up at the end of that activity. The more fingers that you have outstretched, the more privilege you have associated with the specific prompts. And the activity is supposed to kind of help you consider how you might feel about your identity, privilege, positionality. Um, have you considered, certain privileges that you had never considered before after doing this activity? And how might your privileges or lack of privileges impact your choices as a bystander? Um, and we do this activity because our social identity is linked with our privilege, vulnerability, and how we choose to intervene. So thank you for participating. Oh, okay. Next activity. So maybe we'll do this as a large group activity because we're not too big of a group. I will probably break us out into groups a little bit later in the presentation. But if you want to unmute or put it in the chat, let's just spend like a couple minutes and identify a reason that a bystander might avoid intervening.
Oh,
And anyone can just pop in and say what comes to mind. We'll just do it for about a minute.
Physical fear.
Yeah.
fear I'd do the wrong thing.
Will my actions cause more harm to the person I'm trying to protect?
Yeah.
Is my intervention welcomed?
Mm-hmm. I'm seeing physical size, being afraid of getting hurt physically.
I think someone else would be better to help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sometimes I'm afraid that my intervention will cause me to get so involved with that person that I won't be able to detach.
Mm-hmm.
They'll become another person in my life that I'm not ready to handle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are all great reasons. Thank you for sharing. I see someone else in the chat say concern about misreading the situation as well. So as we can see just from even from the comments that you've said, there are a lot of different reasons why people don't intervene. Some additional examples are power dynamics, not having time, like some of you had said, being unsure about the situation, the bystander effect, fear of retaliation, and these barriers are barriers that bystanders face and are the reasons behind their choices on whether or not they intervene. And these can be grouped into three categories: individual, relational, and situational. So individual reasons are about the bystander themselves, relational reasons are about other people, and then situational reasons are about structural, environmental, and organizational reasons. And it can be a combination of these things that kind of impact whether or not folks decide to intervene. So I have a video that I'll share. And we're gonna see if I'm able to present this in slides. So let me know if you can hear the sound. You can hear that?
No.
No, I see one had not. Okay.
No, I can't.
No.
Okay.
No,
Let me check my audio settings real
it says
quick.
mine says can't display presentation.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
Mine says that too.
Oh, I've got
I
the
could hear.
picture.
I could hear it.
Yep, oh, can't see it, can't hear it either.
Yeah, I can't hear or see it.
I can see it.
Okay. It sounds like I'm hearing different varying answers. Let me try. I'm gonna stop sharing and I'm going to try to share it through my web browser and then I'll pull the slides up afterwards.
Whoops. Oh. Whoa.
Can folks see this? Lucas, can you see this that I'm sharing
Yes, I
in full
can.
screen? Okay. So let's give it a try. Oh, before I do that, actually, I have a prompt for you. Forgive me. So notice how many passes the white team makes.
Okay. One. Jeez. 2, 3, 4.
And how many did folks count?
4.
4?
10,
4, 10, any other numbers?
9.
9,
3.
3. Any others? Okay.
Two, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9.
Did folks notice the moonwalking bear this time?
No.
No?
I did, but I did.
No.
Now that I mentioned it. Yeah. So can folks see my slides again, or I don't think so. Let me share them.
Says not, can't display again.
Oh, Bystander.
Can folks see my presenting again?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great.
I can't.
I can't.
Huh. I'm sorry. I'm not sure why some folks are able to and some aren't. Is everyone on a computer or a laptop?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we can certainly share the slides later as well. I apologize for any tech difficulties. So for the video, um, the reason why we share this is to kind of show um, how distractions can get in our way. Um, it's an evidence-based way of showing that we can miss what's going on in front of us if we're distracted by other things. In this case, you might have been too busy counting the number of passes, or maybe because it kind of faded more into the background, or even because of the video quality. So as bystanders, we can't intervene in a situation unless we've noticed it. So what are some things that might distract you in your everyday life? Anyone can add in.
Thinking about other things,
Yeah.
having a goal in mind, like I've got to get someplace, or
Right.
yeah, stuff like that.
Or just not, sometimes purposely not watching all the action around you because it can be so distracting and
Yeah.
overwhelming. Some places that you go, it's a little overwhelming.
Absolutely.
Be in conversation with someone else.
Yeah.
On your
Yeah.
phone.
Oh, go ahead. Was someone going to say one?
I said on your phone.
Yeah, absolutely. One of them for me is if I'm hungry, if I'm really hungry, that can be a distraction. It's, I want to focus on meeting that need. So that's one that comes up for me. But it's important to kind of think about that, especially if we're wanting to, we want to be attentive to our surroundings if if we want to be able to intervene effectively. So it's just kind of a reminder, and it happens for all of us. There are so many distractions. So yeah, that's why we do that video and why we bring that up. So I skipped a couple slides. Here we go. What do folks see here?
A woman?
I'm not seeing any slides.
Whoever's having issues with their display, if Lucas will try to work with you to get that fixed.
Okay,
I apologize.
okay.
Someone said a woman.
Yeah, woman's face or the side of her face.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've seen this
Um,
one before. I think does it turn into a duck somehow? It turns into something else.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what the.
Oh, it's a young woman and an old woman. I think that's the difference.
That
Oh,
is
I've
what
seen-
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I've seen that before.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes, it is a
Person
famous
looks-
picture.
The person looks African American because of black, tight, curly hair, and strangely seems to have a feather coming out of his or her head.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Some folks see the older woman first, and some people see the younger woman first. And then I do have one more. You still can't find the older woman. So the older
no.
woman, I'll hover my mouse over it. This is her nose. This here is her mouth, and this is her chin. And then this part is like a head wrap type thing.
Oh, I don't see your cursor there. Huh.
Oh, darn.
Okay, but I
Well,
see the
hopefully it shows up for you. Sometimes I get stuck on one or the other.
Oh, no, I just see the young woman, but that's okay.
Okay. How about this other one? What are folks seeing?
Oh,
Duck.
Duck, and then I think and a rabbit.
Yes, that was the other
Oh.
one.
oh
Duck and a
yeah.
rabbit.
Duck
Oh,
and a
yeah.
rabbit.
Is everyone able to see the duck and the rabbit on this one? It's a little easier than, yeah.
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 Yeah, so that's another example that we like to show folks, just to remind how we interpret things differently. We all see certain things or notice certain details before others, and interpret things differently. So like we mentioned, you have to notice that an event is taking place in order to intervene, and trying to be aware of any distractions going on. And if you're able to do that, you can anticipate potential problems. So you might be aware of a conflict among some team members that hasn't been addressed. You might be able to anticipate that a situation might escalate if left unresolved. And a situation like that could be considered a red flag indicating a potential for intervention. And so we have 5 decision-making steps that we like to use, which is to notice the event, interpret it as a problem, assume personal responsibility, know how to help, and then implement the help. And we'll kind of dive deeper into how to do that, as we move forward through the presentation. So when it comes to intervening in a situation, we have 5 different strategies that we like to use, or that you can use, and we call them the 5 Ds of bystander intervention. It's important to always note, with bystander intervention, we always want folks to consider their own safety and the safety of others when intervening. And ideally, getting involved earlier in situations can prevent them from escalating. So the first D we have is direct. And this is where you're addressing a person causing harm yourself by calling out their behavior and or asking them to stop. We have distract, which is where you would divert attention away from the person causing harm, the person being harmed, or the situation itself. There's delegate, which is where you would seek help from others. This might be someone else that's present, or maybe someone who is friends with, or otherwise connected with the person making harmful comments. We have delay, which is to check in on the person being harmed after the incident has occurred. And then we have document, which is to record a video or take notes that kind of detail what happened and when and for how long. But with documenting, we do want to ensure that when folks are documenting, not to give it to anyone else without asking for consent by the person that was being harmed. And we'll have a chance to practice the 5Ds. So we also have the seek model, which means intervening safely, early, effectively, and kindly. We want to choose a course of action that best ensures the safety of those involved, as I had mentioned. That's kind of the core of bystander intervention. And this is where your instincts, your own experience, and your social identities will come into play. So trying to practice perspective taking and putting yourself in the other person's shoes when you're assessing for safety can be helpful. And safety should always be a driving force in determining how you intervene. Okay, so practicing the 5Ds. You're in a meeting with coworkers, and one coworker continues using harmful language to describe people with disabilities. What could you do? And folks can put it in the chat or unmute. Alice says, tell them it's inappropriate. Yeah.
I mean, I might say I'm uncomfortable. I have a grandson who's quite disabled and this hurts me.
Yeah. Using I statements can be really helpful in how people receive that. Someone said, I like the idea of rephrasing what they're saying with helpful language. Yeah, rephrase the harmful person's comments pointedly, telling them it's inappropriate. Yeah. And there's kind of a combination of things that you could do if you wanted to. I am seeing folks mentioning kind of direct intervention, as well as there's the option to like document it, check in with anyone that might have been harmed afterwards. You can use a combination of the 5Ds in this scenario. It does kind of, in this scenario, especially if you're with people that you feel comfortable enough with to do this, being direct could be one of the better ways to intervene.
Yeah, it really depends on how well I would know some of the people there and who they're
Exactly.
talking about it. I mean, context
Yeah.
in this situation is so sensitive. I'd need
Absolutely.
more information, please. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Because then, there could be a situation where being direct could escalate the situation or make the person being harmed feel more uncomfortable. So it really depends on the level of comfortability that you have, and that's important to consider. So thank you for mentioning that, the context.
Yeah, I think redirection also take their focus off, if you can, the person that they're harming. Just sometimes just by simply asking a question or something. You don't have to be confrontational, but just
Yeah.
distracting. I think that's a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great one. And that was the other one that folks had mentioned, was kind of either starting to use appropriate language instead, or kind of redirecting the conversation as a tool. And I see a comment from Emily. Yeah, there will be some scenarios where we'll get to work through more nuances coming up in just a moment. Um, so we'll have a chance now to practice the 5Ds ourselves. So what I'll do here is I am thinking that there's enough folks to do some breakout rooms. I think I'll do groups of 3, and you'll have a chance to break out. I'll give you maybe like 5 to 10 minutes to work through one or a combination of these scenarios as a group. We do encourage people, if you feel comfortable, to role play different ways that you could intervene using the 5Ds. But if you feel more comfortable just discussing the scenario and how you would intervene, that is also okay to do. And as we have discussed so far with this training, we do ask people to kind of consider factors such as power dynamics and their impact. And it sounds like you folks have done a great job of doing that already, just with that first scenario I presented. So I will try and get you into breakout groups. Does anyone have any questions before I do that? Okay. Oh, go ahead, Maverette.
Yes, I still, somehow I managed to click something and I've got all of your slides that you're using for the presentation. So what I'm looking at right now is practice the 5Ds. I don't know how to get out of that. I don't know how I got into it and I don't know how to get out of it. So I don't mind seeing what you're doing, but I thought you should know that I have that up.
Oh, do other folks have that view?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, that's what we're seeing now.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
Oh.
that's what we're supposed to be seeing.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah, the full, you're seeing just the one slide that says
Right.
practicing the 5Ds.
And
I'm
I see
still,
all the different scenarios. There's
Yes.
6 things.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you're supposed to be seeing that. That's great.
I am
Okay,
still
then.
seeing nothing. I'm still seeing nothing. It says can't display presentation. I did
Okay,
see when you
Alice?
showed, this is Alice.
Alice, your Microsoft, your Microsoft program on your computer might be outdated, because I know I had to update mine to get on today.
Oh,
And I don't know how
Okay.
much you use Microsoft, so if you don't use it very often for anything, you might not have permission for on your computer to go to all the spaces that you need to go to.
oh,
That's strange. I never use Microsoft, but I've got it
Yeah.
all showing.
yeah, yeah, and I don't know how at this point to update it.
Yeah,
I'd
but you know
like
what?
to-
I'm
I
going to
see
share
at the top that says
share the
download.
recording, so you'll have a chance to see it all. But are you able to
Ellie.
like keep going even though you can't see all the stuff?
I'm sorry, I can hear everything, but I can't see anything.
So, Ellie, you could come downstairs.
I probably could. Okay, it'll take, well, no, I can't. I have something, sorry, I have something in the oven, actually.
Okay. Sorry.
Maybe
Sorry
later.
about the tech difficulties.
Yeah,
I
Okay.
hope that, yeah, we do have it recording, and hopefully you'll still be able to participate a little bit
Okay.
if yeah, thank you.
okay.
I will do breakout rooms now. I believe when I put you into breakout groups, you won't be able to see these scenarios.
Oh,
So if you have like a phone to take a picture, you can do that. And then I can also drop a picture of it in the chat, which you might also not have access to though, once we're in breakout groups. So let me put it in the chat now so that folks can download it if they want to. Well, I was going to try to, but I'm not having the ability to do that.
It was a great idea to take a picture.
Did
Thank you.
people get a picture though?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
let's go with that. And if people have issues, you can come back to the main room and I'll be here, okay? So I'll give you 7 minutes. Oh, Lucas just put it in the chat. Yeah, let's give it until 2:50. And let me get those rooms put together.
Ooh,
They should be opening now.
okay.
You can join when you're ready.
I'm not, of course, I'm your,
Says it'll move you in 10 seconds. So just hang on. Okay.
I'm actually not seeing a breakout room to join, or
Oh.
are you putting us in them?
Yeah, it should be automatically putting you in them.
Okay,
I'm
well,
wondering.
maybe it
Okay.
will.
It should have by now. Oh, I'm so sorry, Alice. I think I'm not sure. Maybe it is an update.
Okay, well, I wonder, gosh. I'll see if I can update. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, I'd be happy if you don't want to do that. I'd be happy to practice with you if you feel comfortable, whatever you want to do.
Sure, I could practice with you. That'd be nice. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna set a quick timer so that I don't get caught up in our practice and bring people back at the right time. Okay, which scenario do you want to work through? Oh, you're not able to see.
I'm not able to see.
Okay. Well, I know that there was a focus on having an interest in ICE events. One of the scenarios
Yes.
is you are in a public space when ICE officers begin to arrest a member of the community. Would you like to work through that one, or I can tell
Sure,
you? Okay.
that would be fine. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you have any initial responses? Just hearing that scenario using the 5Ds, and I can also remind you what they are.
Yeah, I was at a meeting of Southwest Indivisible the other evening, and we had a gentleman named, gosh, I have notes, but I don't remember his name offhand, who himself is facing ICE deportation. And he said one of the things to, well, he said many things. You don't want to be aggressive. Like, I wouldn't want to hold up a sign and say, free, free Maria, or you stupid ICE, you don't want to do that, because then they associate that immigrant with violent actions. So I know, so one of the things you would have to, I don't know, that doesn't really fit in, but you'd have to really know the situation before. You could perhaps explain, like, direct, or perhaps distract even the person being attacked by saying, they do not have the authority, ICE does not have the authority to arrest you. You could come with me. Please come with me. You could document, you could say to the ICE person, I'm turning on my video camera now, and I understand that you don't have the authority to arrest anybody. Do you have a warrant? Do you have a search warrant? If you're at a home. If not, please go away and return when you do. And I'm documenting this. If there are other people around, perhaps you could delegate to somebody to say, would you please go get Jose's mom, or whatever, or please tell the community that this is happening. The sheriff is on our side. the police are on our side, understanding because they've agreed not to work with ICE. Could you please notify the police or the sheriff that this is going on? And I might even tell the ICE officer that, you know, I'm calling our sheriff or I'm calling the police because they have informed us that they will not cooperate unless there is a direct warrant for this person's arrest. So I think I would go through all those steps and assure the person being attempted to be apprehended that they did not, that they are being intimidated and they do not have to go because this ICE person has no authority. So that's what I would do.
Yeah, no, that is, I'm just nodding along because those are
Okay.
all fantastic. Very, like, that was a very comprehensive answer and I appreciate it.
And if that ICE officer, you know, I'm not a very, you know, I'm an old lady who's just like 5'4" and 120 pounds. I'm not very big, but I don't mind if somebody yells at me. I mean, I'm capable to stand my ground. I wouldn't be intimidated if the ICE officer was trying to intimidate me and I could just say something like, you know, excuse me, I'm a citizen. I was born here. I don't appreciate what you're doing. I'm going to step back. I would like for you to step back. And I am going to take Maria with me because you have no authority. I mean, I wouldn't be afraid. Hopefully, I wouldn't be afraid to do that.
Yeah, and that's a great, like, whether fear is there would kind of impact the choice that you make.
Yes,
You know,
yes,
if you
that's
feel
true.
like taking that route would negatively impact the person that ICE is targeting, you might use one of the other um ways of intervening that you had mentioned. If it
Yeah.
feels, you know, if it's maybe someone that you know or someone that seems to, you know, be wanting that help,
Hmm.
you go that route. But it's important to kind of notice, like, you're noticing your own positionality, your body
Right.
size and height, and that does affect how you might want to
Sure.
how that affects how you want to intervene. And um you don't want to get to a place where you might be feeling where the situation is escalated because, you know, the ICE officer is escalated and then that scares you. So I
Right.
appreciate you kind of noticing that because that's what we want folks
Yeah.
to is to have that awareness. And as you had mentioned, there are just so many different ways that you could intervene, and
Yeah.
you can combine things too, which you did kind of mention is maybe you ask someone to record it and while
Right.
you assist, you know, the person. Um, so I,
So
yeah,
do you think the strategy of either telling the ICE person or asking somebody else to call the police or do you think the immigrant or the person in question that is being harassed might be not wanting that to happen? I mean, I would have to really know for sure that person, that there weren't any warrants out for that person's arrest, because maybe by calling the sheriff or the police, they'd say, oh, Maria Gonzalez, yes, you know, we got you first, whatever. So, yeah, it's really tricky. I guess the safest thing is to say, um, maybe, excuse me, ICE person, do you have a warrant for this person's arrest? And you know what? I'm right here with my camera um, documenting what's going on.
yeah, it's, I hear what you're saying. It's a very, there's a lot of nuance to the situation.
Yeah.
And my alarm just went off, but I'll finish with you and then bring folks back because I'm sure they're still
Okay.
talking too. Um, there's a lot of nuance. I will say that intervening in these situations, specifically with ICE, is not our specialty, for lack of better words.
Okay.
My only concern with letting the officer know that they don't have a warrant is it potentially escalating the situation.
Okay.
But as you
Okay.
had acknowledged, you don't want to do anything that's going to put the person being harmed um, negatively impact them, which, as you said, would be kind of protesting or yelling at the
Yeah,
officer.
of course.
So I think it's all about your approach, how charged the situation seems to be, how
Yeah.
far into the situation it is, like if they're,
Okay.
you know what I mean? If
Yes.
it's earlier in the situation, you might feel like, you know, you can mention what that person's rights are.
Yeah.
But if they're
Yeah.
in the middle of an arrest, maybe you go with recording and having
Sure.
it documented and seeing if there's any of their family members or friends where you can say, hey, do you want this video that I just took? That kind of
Okay.
thing. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Sure. It really does. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard to have, you know, to have all
Yeah.
the answers, but that's what comes to mind.
And
Yeah.
I
I
think
really think you're on the right track.
I really like to just keep remembering first do no harm, you know, like the medical.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And
Thank
that
you.
is kind of the heart of our specific with or of bystander intervention. So yeah.
Right. Thank you.
All right. I'm gonna
That
bring
was
folks
helpful.
back.
Sure.
Yeah. I'm glad I
course.
got to chat with you. I'm sorry
Yeah,
about
me
your tech
too.
difficulties though.
Yeah, well, you know, I did see something about update and I'll do it after this, but I don't think I can do it while this is going on and still be with you. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's okay.
But thank you for muddling along with me. I appreciate it.
Of course. I enjoyed it.
Thanks.
Folks should be coming back
Judy.
any second now too. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, hello?
Oh,
Oh,
we're moving
uh,
back to the main group,
yes,
but we'll
that's
talk. We can keep talking about it.
later, yeah.
Well, do folks feel like they need a little more time?
We were good. We were good.
Yeah,
We're
we're
okay?
good.
No, we were good.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it was good. It was good. It was a good exercise.
Okay. We can spend a few minutes discussing as a whole group. I did realize that we sometimes give like 15 minutes and I gave us more like 10. So does anyone want to kind of debrief or share what you talked about in your groups?
Well,
No.
we talked about the ice scenario, and it turns out that we've from different people. There are three of us. Two of us have had some trainings, and so it was nice to be able to compare the information that we'd gotten about how to begin and try to find a happy medium. Because I remember, I can't remember where I heard it, but it was to make some noise when someone's trying to detain someone. The idea was to make some noise, and then Maeve was in the group, and she got different information that you don't want to cause a big scene, especially when ice is on the part of the scenario. You want to try and keep everything calm, even though you attract attention and try to get other people to come in and help out. You really want to keep it down more. So that was a really good conversation.
Yeah. And Ally was at that meeting
Yes.
also, so.
Yes, yes, I can concur because that's what we just spoke about, that we were told to not escalate the situation by being sort of loud and rude and disruptive or carrying signs, because that would associate the very person we're trying to help with rabble rousers, so to speak. And that could put that person in a more negative position, saying, oh, you know, Maria is a rabble rouser. Look at that. We don't want her here, you know, look at that. So it's maybe the opposite of what we would think as activists, like let's carry our signs and say, you know, free Jose or free Maria.
Right.
And in fact, that would be detrimental.
Counterproductive, yeah.
Yeah.
In that
Okay.
scenario, we talked about videoing, unobtrusively videoing the situation, and also asking the person if there's anyone they want us to contact for them.
Oh,
The person being arrested.
That's a good one.
That's a good point.
That's a good one.
That's
And
wonderful.
we were talking about the fact that I don't think any of us know how to live stream anything, but I think that could be useful if we maybe not. Maybe none of us have a place to live stream it to where anybody would really pay any attention. So I
Yeah.
don't know. It just came up as another option when you're talking about documenting it.
I haven't looked into it, but supposedly the ACLU has something that you can like post stuff up to automatically.
Oh,
But I haven't looked into it. But that's what
okay.
I heard at one of the, I think when we were talking about ICE at some point.
Oh,
I think it's an app, an ACLU app or something like that.
oh, that's interesting. Okay, well, that's something that's worth looking into then, for
Yeah.
sure.
And one thing I brought up, and this may not be right, is I just said, you know, and I wasn't thinking of a huge group that you just happened to be there when this was happening, is to try to ask what was going on. And then, you know, and then if you could, to tell the person, hey, do you have the right paperwork? You know, do you have the paperwork that you can do this with? And he'll probably say, you know, just butt out. This isn't your business, and then take pictures or videos or whatever if that happens.
Yeah, I really appreciate everyone. It seems like most folks talked about this scenario. I talked about it with Alice. And the only thing I would add is with live streaming, just the consideration that you might not have the consent of the folks that you're live streaming when you do that. And so that might potentially could potentially cause harm. So it I would say it might depend on, you know, what type of event is happening, if it's, you know, a specific person being targeted, or if you're maybe trying to alert the community, that might be live streaming could be a good way to say, hey, look, there's ICE officers. But if it's people that are potentially being detained or in the middle of being detained, that might not be the route that you take in terms of causing, because in the case of bystander intervention, we want to center safety and the safety of the person that's being harmed as well. So yeah. The other thing that Alice and I talked about was, you know, in the event of ICE being in the community, how you intervene will vary depending on what is happening or how far into a situation ICE might be. If they're maybe like trying to suss out the situation, trying to find someone, you might intervene differently than if they're in the middle of actively trying to arrest or detain someone. And we had also talked about, you know, documenting, maybe seeing if there's family members that they want contacted. If the situation isn't escalated, if it's in the beginning stages, you might feel comfortable enough to inform the officer of that person's rights, if it feels like it's not going to escalate the situation. And those are all things that you had mentioned. So I just wanted to share it back and mention it. Did anything else come up or anything else folks want to share?
Yeah, I think maybe we mentioned this already, but one of the things that we thought, if there was kind of, you know, some people on the periphery, sort of semi-curious, encouraging people to come in and be there to support the person who knows numbers, but not confrontational. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then I think somebody mentioned, actually, if it's possible, it's early on to surround the person with bodies so that, you know, can't touch a person, can't touch us. If we're around a person, they're not supposed to grab onto the person being detained. So who knows?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I want to sort of reinforce what Maeve said from the little bit of not training, but from the talk that we had at Indivisible last week, that you want to show that that person is an upstanding member of the community. They have a lot of friends in the community. They're active in the community. They do good works in the community. And so you would want like, you know, the people in the community who are known to be, you know, like good folks in the community, to be there peacefully and let people know that, hey, he's important or she's important to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I like, well, we talked about kind of what it's supposed to be said in medicine, first do no harm. And that's really, really important. And that's one thing I really did learn at the Indivisible talk, is because I might be ready to go in there with my sign, you know, free Maria or whatever, or ICE go away, but that would be absolutely the wrong thing to do.
Yeah. Thank you for reiterating that, Alice.
So
All right.
we didn't
Okay.
talk about it directly, but we sort of tangentially talked about the fact that you have to de-escalate yourself in that situation,
Yeah.
so that you can be helpful. You
Yes.
can't be really upset and really not even
Yes.
confrontational, but just really upset and be helpful in that
Mhm.
situation.
Yeah. Yeah, those are all great points. I appreciate all of you participating. And we'll move forward. So we will have an opportunity to practice intervening when there's microaggressions that happen. And this next portion of the training will focus on talking about implicit bias, microaggressions, how to interrupt microaggressions, and also how to take accountability if you have caused harm. So, bias is a tendency to prefer or favor one thing, person, or group over another, usually in a way that's considered to be unfair. And there's two types of bias. Well, there's many, but two of them are explicit and implicit bias. Explicit bias is the attitude and beliefs that we have about a person or group of people on a conscious level, where implicit bias is a form of bias that occurs automatically and unintentionally, that affects judgments, decisions, and behaviors. Implicit bias is also known as unconscious bias. One type of harmful behavior that can result in the need for people to intervene are microaggressions. These are verbal, nonverbal, and environmental snubs or insults, intentional or unintentional, which communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative messages targeting people based off of their marginalized group memberships. Microaggressions often perpetuate harmful stereotypes, even if they're not intended to cause harm. You can see there are some examples here of microaggressions, and there are often common themes associated with microaggressions, such as implications regarding someone's character due to their race or other factors. So one example would be not giving eye contact when an individual is speaking, or interrupting an individual when they're speaking. And it can be hard to know what to say, but there are some different approaches that you can take, and some examples are kind of listed here on the slide. And some of them, I believe, have been mentioned, which one of them is the expressing your feelings. Using an I statement can be helpful. You can ask for clarification or more information. That was one that folks had mentioned. Pretend you don't understand. Separate intent from impact. Giving information or sharing your experiences or offer alternative perspectives. You can try to use humor if it feels appropriate. Restate or rephrase. And then you can also appeal to values and principles. And most effective responses are polite instead of hostile, and focus on positive qualities more than accusations, which can result in someone becoming defensive and being unable to recognize the harm they've caused. So we do want to give a trigger warning that some of the examples that we have might be triggering. We are trying to kind of illustrate what a microaggression is, and focusing on verbal microaggressions. We try not to get overly specific, but we also want people to have a chance to work through scenarios. So just take care of yourself however you might need to as we work through these. So an example of a microaggression that we have is someone saying to a BIPOC individual, where are you really from? And the problem with that is that it indicates that that person will always be an outsider, even if they were born in this country. And a way that you could intervene in that situation is saying, what do you mean by that? Or saying, oh, this person is actually from Portland. Does anyone else have any ideas of how you could respond?
I
You
could
could
see
turn it
myself
back on
turning
them
to
and
the person
say,
who
oh, go
who
ahead.
said it
Sorry.
and ask, where are you really from?
That was what I was going to say.
Ah,
Yep.
And what I was thinking is probably escalating, so maybe not, but I think I might say from Mars, just to
Yeah.
deflect. It's a silly question. It's not a silly question in the sense of if somebody's truly curious because, because of other circumstances, like whatever they might be. But that if you're really curious about, where in India, it's like, here's a person, that's clearly, I don't know, whatever, you're, and anyway, never mind.
Yeah, I think it's the way that it's phrased that's so insulting.
Yes,
Where are you
yeah.
really from? I mean, if you're curious about someone's background, you could say, it sounds like you have experience and you've lived in
Yeah.
places other than Portland. I mean, there's so
Again,
many other ways to ask that question or get that
Yeah.
information instead of this strange question.
Yes, and also, again, it's context. You're at an
Yes.
international dinner, and there you are. So,
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. You answered kind of your own question, or Joanna helped as well, which is kind of context. The couple responses you had mentioned where you're using humor or asking it back, that might be an okay way to intervene. It really depends on who it is that you're talking to. And how you have to assess, if you think it will escalate the situation or not. If you think it will, you might want to go a different route. But if you think that person might actually receive it okay, that way, you could try that. So I appreciate you pointing that back out, and also just circling back to the idea of not wanting to cause harm, thinking about context and the individual, because those are really some key elements. So we have,
Can I
oh,
say something too?
yeah,
A lot of times people are not trying to be insulting, but they don't know how to ask the question. Not, in other words, perhaps not trying to say, well, you can't be from here, because if you're from the South, people from the North or the West are like, where the hell are you from? Because you have such a deep accent, and they're not implying that you're from another country or that you don't belong, but they're, so sometimes it's a way a question is asked. And so
yes,
you can maybe perhaps jump in and say, is this what you meant, in a way that, it's not, where you assume that they totally mean that they're just trying to harm the other person or ignorantly harming someone, when they don't mean to. because we have a lot of different people in this country, and I've lived in 14 different cities, and they are all different in every one of those cities. And so you have to know who you're talking to and what their background is, I think, before you just attack them in a sense. But so I think the humor is the best way. Or if you're knowledgeable about the person that you're speaking to, you can perhaps bring them into the 21st century.
Yeah. Thank you for adding that. I think it's important because we will kind of talk about a lot of people do unintentionally cause harm. And when we intervene, we want it to be effective for everyone. We want the person being harmed, um, to maybe prevent it from happening in the future or to someone else. But we also want the person causing harm to be able to make better choices moving forward as well, or be able to acknowledge that they were causing harm. And I feel like what you're speaking to is kind of separating impact versus intent, which is it's on this slide, and I do want to review kind of what the examples were here, like saying, I know you didn't realize it, but when you said, X, Y, or Z, it was hurtful to me, because, it made an assumption about where I'm from or whatever it may be. So humor seems to be one that has worked for folks, and trying to separate intent from impact in this specific scenario could also be helpful of saying, hey, I know you weren't trying to hurt my feelings when you said that, but it did, and here's why. But again, it really depends on the context and the person that you're talking with. So thank you, Kathy. So here's an opportunity for folks to practice interrupting. I will break folks out into groups again, groups of 3 to 4, and give you an opportunity to work through either one or a combination of these scenarios. And we encourage you to think about why the situation is harmful, thinking about one thing you could say or do to interrupt, and then also thinking about potential power dynamics depending on who might be involved, how your approach might change, and who the interaction should be between if it's relevant. Uh-oh. Are, are folks able to see the slide? No? Oh no.
I'm not, of course, I'm never, so I don't listen to me, but
Oh, Lucas, can you
Hey,
see it?
yeah, I can. Hey, Melody, do you want to try if you can share your screen rather than directly sharing the PowerPoint, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Let's
I
try
could
that real
see them.
quick.
I could see them before, and I can't see the slides now, which is weird.
Yeah, me too.
Dang it. What have I done? I appreciate you working, being patient with the technology. I'm certainly not an expert.
Gee, I
Let's try
appreciate
this.
your all that you're doing for us.
Oh,
Yes.
thank you.
I can see it. Yay.
Okay, so this is me sharing
I can
screen.
see it now.
Well, darn it. I'm sorry. I should have been doing it this. There's multiple ways you can share your screen. So it looks like this works better. Folks can see it again? Yay. Okay,
Yes. Even I.
great. Great. That makes me so happy. Okay. Can you still see the screen, or are now you seeing yourselves? Because I just opened. Are you still seeing the presentation slides? Oh,
I can
okay,
still.
great.
Yes.
Oh, this is great for me too. Good. Okay, thank you, Lucas. This is why Lucas is here. I will break you out into groups. Do folks want a second to take photos of that slide so that you can see the scenarios?
No, who is
Okay.
this? Oh, you
What's that?
called Emily.
Oh, Emily, you're unmuted. I am going to assign you to rooms now. It's just loading. Okay, it should be prompting you any second. And I'll give you 10 minutes.
Yeah, hi. I can see the slides, but I'm not sure what room I'm in.
No, you know what? It didn't put you in one.
Oh, okay.
And
Here we
I
are.
deleted them and I was like, dang it. I tried to put you, let me see if I can assign you somehow.
Okay.
No, why is it
Sorry
doing
to
this?
be such a problem child.
No, I'm totally fine with it. It says, for whatever reason, it says this person can't access breakout rooms. So maybe that
I
is you
guess
needing to
I guess
update.
I do need to update. So
But we can
yeah.
work through them together if you still want
Okay,
if you want to.
sure.
Yeah. Thank you for being such a good sport.
Okay.
Which one are you interested in practicing?
Oh, let's see. So it's either you don't look disabled or why are you so emotional? Just calm down, or is it, oh, you are visiting a space and notice an individual who appears to be intoxicated? Are those, because Maeve sent that to me. I'm not seeing that slide right now. You're at a party.
No, this one's different. This one is can you see my slide right now?
I can. It says let's practice interrupting microaggressions.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that is
Yes.
what we're working
Oh,
on. Yes, so it's
all
any
right.
of the 4 scenarios.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I'd like to do them all, but maybe number 4.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
when your English is so good, when did you start
Yes.
speaking English?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so why is that harmful? Okay, is that where we're going now?
Yeah.
Well, it's harmful because that implies that that person spoke at some point, either was around people, which implies that the community maybe they came from had inferior English skills. And that's, that's a real implication. It's like asking someone that looks different, where do you come from? When in fact they come from Chicago, just like you, and that,
Right.
that happens all the time. Yeah, so it's harmful because it's just making an assumption about a person that you know nothing about, except maybe hearing them speak one time or looking at them for the first time. And it also implies that a person can't learn quickly. I mean, let's suppose this person were an actor. That person could take on any accent with a little training. So it could be, in fact, that this person has one voice. Maybe they do speak a dialect. Maybe at home, they speak in a dialect that we don't consider, quote, standard English. And maybe they use a different dialect when they're navigating different waters, let's say. And so we're not giving that person credit either for living in the same neighborhood we do, or from having intelligence enough to be able to switch. And I know of people of color who switch. They switch the way they act. They switch maybe the type of syntax and language that they use to, quote, navigate in a white world, end quote. So, or navigate in a male world or something like that. So it's just really insulting. And I think that for many ways it's harmful. Okay, so identify
Yes.
one thing they could say or do to interrupt. And you could say, excuse me, I wonder why we're having this why you're starting this conversation when the topic today is how to cure cancer. This isn't what we're talking about. So could we please just go on with what we're doing? This is very distracting and really off topic. And that would be a way to maybe, because I'd want to say to the person, how can you dare to be so insulting? But that's not gonna help, really. That's not gonna deflect the situation.
Yeah.
Okay, discuss potential power dynamics depending on who might be involved. So if this is somebody's potential boss who says that to them, then that could be really harmful because it's setting up and maybe purposefully setting up a power dynamic like I'm better than you are because I know that my way of speaking is inherent to me. I didn't have to struggle to learn this. I didn't come from this, other culture, or other neighborhood or parents who didn't know how to speak. I know how to speak. So it's really setting up that kind of a dynamic. Or if it's staff to staff, then it's again kind of setting up. It's not just a curiosity. Like maybe when you get to know somebody better, you start to ask them about their family, or you begin to find out, maybe what their heritage or whatever their quote background is. But it's not something you do. It's not what, let's say, equals do. If you're staff to staff, you might want to say, gee, I'm new to this job too. What other experience have you had in this kind of a job? Because maybe we can collaborate. Maybe we can be allies together because I'm a little nervous about this new job. And that's a way to maybe set up collegiality rather than trying to be a power shift. Let's see, how might your approach change again if you're the supervisor, unless you really want to be that kind of supervisor that's intimidating. You don't, there are other ways to, that's a big deal these days. There's a lot of things that shouldn't have happened that are happening, but
Yes.
I wake up every morning and I see the news and I say, I can't believe it. I've stopped saying that. Now
Yeah.
I unfortunately believe, we don't need to go there.
I hear
and
you.
yeah, I know you do. So, and again, I think it's also maybe ageism too. I mean, it says move to other examples if you have extra time. I don't know if we have extra time, or I'm
Yeah.
monopolizing. So please share with me some of your approaches because I want to learn from
Oh,
you.
yes. Well, I just want to say I am just all of your answers are fantastic. So I've just been nodding along.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have no.
I've been around for a long time. I taught community.
I didn't doubt you. I just want to just commend you that,
thank you. Okay.
It's a good way. Yeah, you're on the right track of, again, what the presentation kind of centers. I think, another way that you could interrupt that scenario is, I had been thinking you could, well, I wanted to say I actually really liked how you used kind of a distraction or just kind of centering what the actual goal of, let's say that they were at a meeting, like, okay, well, this has really nothing to do with, the way that you had worded it was, I felt that it was not something that might make that person defensive. It's kind of almost distracting back to the actual focus of why
Yeah,
folks
thank
are
you.
there.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. One way to interrupt this is a very harmful thing that often happens. And so I really do feel like in these situations, if we're wanting the person to that's being harmed, if we're trying to avoid it happening again, if it's happening in a, let's say, a workplace or a space that people often share together, where you have to be around each other again, you could try to separate the impact from intent and say, hey, it sounds like you're trying to give, this person a compliment. Or if really
Okay.
in the best situation, it would actually not to put it onto the person being harmed, but if the person being harmed felt comfortable, they could say it, it sounds like you're trying to give me a compliment, but this really was hurtful to me. English is the only
Mm-hmm.
language I speak.
Right.
So there's kind of that. Again, contextually, sometimes it can be helpful to um, talk to the person that was harmed afterwards and say, hey,
Mm-hmm.
what feels best? Like, do we want to take some sort of action? Do you feel like you can talk to this person about it? Should I talk to someone about it? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what would be the least harmful thing for you? Because that seemed really uncomfortable and inappropriate. And then they could decide, you could help that person potentially decide if you want to go to HR, if you want to go to the person
Yeah.
that caused harm. So those are a couple other ones, and
Yeah, that's
it's
good.
yeah, you want to again
Ye-
think about the safety of that person, not
Right.
trying to give the person being harmed work to do, but just seeing how you can be supportive, um, and just considering that context. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, because yeah, the idea of first do no harm, I think that's absolutely right. Thank you for remembering that, to ask the person, maybe that person didn't even feel harmed by that.
exactly. Yeah,
Um, or maybe they did, but it's just not worth, some battles are not worth fighting, so to speak.
yeah,
Maybe they just want to get along, and, clearly, I mean, it could be harmful. It probably is. It's like the 100th cut, or,
yeah,
the extra straw. And I hear that, and I've heard that from friends of color and so forth, that some things they you hear them and you don't like them, but it's really not worth sort of escalating because of the situation they're in. They like their
yeah,
job, they like their colleagues. So yeah, and that's a reminder to me to not sort of jump in um, without checking first with the person. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that's
yeah.
good.
And it's hard. It's hard because I hear you, and it seems like we both have that understanding of,
Yeah,
we don't want the person being harmed. We don't want to cause more harm. We don't want to escalate. We don't want to put a target on them potentially, especially if it's in the workplace,
yeah,
or in, some sort of group. And so, but it can be hard when, we're passionate about, as social justice and,
right.
you know,
I
all of those things. So yeah.
I kind of had some years ago. I have two biracial granddaughters who identify as Black. I mean, they don't really have a choice because of their physical looks, um, but to identify. When they were little and I was out with them, sometimes people would say to me, and even people of color, even other, Black people, let's say, would ask me if I was their real grandmother.
Mm,
And I would ask them, could you please explain to me what you mean by real? I am their real grandmother because I love them, I care for them. Um, and yes, to me, they are real. We're all very real. But are you asking me if I am their biological grandmother? Maybe that's what you're asking me. And actually, the answer to that is also yes. And that would just be, I would kind of put someone, but without harming them, and certainly without bringing harm to my granddaughters or myself. They were too young then. They're 14 and 16 now, but this is way back when they were little tiny things. little tiny adorable, they're still adorable, but little tiny adorable baby and toddlers. But it really, I had a lovely conversation with a young Black woman. And we talked about assumptions that people make, and it turned out to be a really lovely conversation. And, nobody felt harmed. It was just very educational, but things don't always work that way. Things
Yeah.
don't always work where you have somebody who's open to realizing, oh yeah, I made an assumption, and then is willing to talk about it. But wouldn't it be nice if we could all sort of take our assumptions and realize what they are and be able to talk through it?
Yeah,
Doesn't always happen. So, but it's great.
absolutely.
And it's great to just remember that it's not about me as an intervener,
Yes,
because
exactly.
sometimes we get this, I want to save the world mode, or I really want to help. And sometimes it does, egos get involved. So that's something that I need to be aware of. And I think we all do. It's not about me, it's about that person who we think is being harmed. I mean, sometimes situations are obvious. We think when someone's being harmed, but there are situations where maybe not exactly. So we have
Yeah.
to take the ego out of it. I think that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I'll bring folks back from breakout rooms, but
Yes, thank you.
I
It's really
do,
nice talking with you.
I know, and I'm the same. I love talking through it. I enjoy it so much. It's hard for me to, I'm like, I could
Yeah,
keep going.
I know,
The
but
only
let's
thing
get
I,
back to the others. Thank you so
yes,
much.
yeah, the
Okay.
only thing I would add, and I'm bringing folks back
Yeah.
now, is that, it is trying to remove the ego, but also still acknowledge your own positionality too, right? Which is what you're
Sure.
speaking to. I just wanted to reiterate it again because I think folks have done a really good job of acknowledging that. So,
Yes.
yeah,
Thank you.
great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Here they are
Yeah.
back.
Hi,
Yay.
everyone. I think I
Hi,
gave you a
everyone.
little bit more than 10 minutes. Alice and I
Oh, thank
were
you.
having a great conversation. We were our own little breakout group.
Yes, it was great. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move forward and give folks a chance to debrief. Um, did anyone want to share what they talked about?
We talked about whether you know the person's involved or not as being important, because some of these things you wouldn't want to interfere unless it's like if it's your kid or your husband or your grandmother or somebody saying something hurtful, you might say something which you wouldn't say to a stranger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question, or something to point out is, and I think that came up a little bit with Alice and I, is the context of the situation. If you don't know the person, if it's in a public space, you certainly don't want to intervene in a way that could potentially escalate the situation. Something you could potentially do if you saw harm being caused is check in with the person that was being potentially harmed after it's happened, instead of like directly intervening or talking to the person causing harm. But how you intervene will depend on the context of the situation, um, and the person causing harm and the person being harmed, whatever your relationship is to them. Um, does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked a lot about context too.
Mm-hmm.
That it makes a huge difference.
It does. Yeah. Context, your own positionality, and just trying to cause the least amount of harm are just three key factors in intervening, and that came up with Alice and I as well. Did anything else come up that folks wanted to share?
Not really.
Okay.
We kind of were all over the place and in the terms of, sharing some situations we might have been in and, how we handled it, and, some so it was not as focused as the other scenario that we had.
Mm-hmm.
Little
Sure.
fuzzier, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we did touch on, you know, how ingrained certain things are in our upbringing, the context in which we grew up, and how hard sometimes it is to shake that. We were particularly kind of talking at the end about the pronoun situation, like, you know, nobody's a they. We are singular, and we're on the one hand wanting to be seen as individuals. On the other hand, we have no pronoun that doesn't identify some sort of binary presumption. And so we ended up, you know, just confronting the fact that that some things, some responses that people have that might be experienced as a microaggression are just, you know, not intended, or it's totally the unintentional.
Mm-hmm.
I just
Totally.
would, since I live with a they, one way to think about it that might make it easier for you is to think of a they person, a non-binary person, as a two-spirit, which is what the Native Americans call it, a two-spirit person. That might make, hey, I help you with the they.
Yeah, yes. Yes, of course. And I mean, this may not, this might be uh, the context in which it makes sense to me is somebody who's bisexual, who truly is bisexual, two-spirited in that way. So I love that the two-spirited. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. And I appreciate you also saying, you know, you sometimes folks cause harm and they absolutely don't have that intention. And that does happen. Um, and we will talk about to how to navigate being a person that has caused harm, because every single one of us has caused harm, intentional or not. Um, and you know, when that happens, it's the same, it's trying to learn. And in the situation of trying to help someone being harmed, it doesn't always have to be that direct intervention. It can be checking in with the person afterwards. Um, so yeah, thank you for sharing. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
And yeah, and
Yeah.
we talked about, and I think maybe you just implied that, or it was that not to make assumption that that person who we think is being harmed feels like they're being harmed or feels like they want an intervener to do anything about it.
That's a good point.
So,
Yeah.
and it depends on the situation. I mean, there are times when you know, see that someone is being harmed and you want to do what you can, but there are other things that are maybe more subtle that, you know, it's like the 100 cuts or whatever that the person who we think is being harmed, maybe they feel like they are, but they're in a situation where they want to pick the battles that they fight. Maybe it's a work situation where they know they have to I want to say ignore or whatever, maybe let some things slide and not make a big deal because they're operating in a different world, so to speak. So, you know, I talked about not wanting my own ego or my own assumptions to jump in and stop a harm that the person I think is being harmed wants to maybe let slide, you know.
Yeah. Thank you for speaking to that, Alice, because I think I was trying to get there and then I lost my train of thought a little bit. So I was like, we'll just move on. So thank you so much, because that is what I was trying to get to.
Oh, all right. Well,
I
because we talked
appreciate it.
together, so
That's
we
true.
talked together. So
Yes. Thank
Right.
you.
And
Yes.
I just want to clarify that for me, it's only a matter of language,
Mhm.
not people's realities.
Of course, yeah.
You know, not at all. It's just, damn, our language is so restricted. Other languages have all kinds of subtleties. I think about in India specifically. th- so it's just that it's not
Mhm.
people who, uh, yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
absolutely. And it sounds
So
like, you
often
know,
because I live with someone who's a they, and I hear that English teacher thing come up all the time of
Of
because
course,
it's
yeah,
like a grammar thing, right? But
yeah.
something I learned that I thought was interesting was that the word you used to be only plural. It wasn't singular. People used thee, thou, and you was when it was plural. And
Wow,
that is a plural that's moved into the language as a singular. And maybe they will become that as well at some future time.
yeah,
mhm.
interesting.
That is
Yeah.
Yeah,
really
because
interesting.
language, if language doesn't change, it's no longer a living language.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it can be harder to unlearn sometimes than it can be to learn new things. So it's, you know, I hear the acknowledgement and trying to find ways to, you know, to learn or to unlearn, you know, things that we've learned and understand. But like Alice had said, you know, there are situations sometimes where intervening can actually cause more harm. It can cause harm, especially with microaggressions. We had talked about being in a work situation. Maybe someone says, you know, the example of your English is so good. When did you start speaking English? Um, you know, if someone intervened and said something to the person causing harm, that could cause uncomfortable dynamics for the person being harmed in the workplace. So um, or cause unnecessary attention on that person. That could be the same situation with pronouns, is if someone doesn't correct their own pronouns, that might mean that they don't want someone else to correct them for them. You might check in with the person being harmed afterwards, or find a way to educate folks as a whole on certain things to make it be for everyone and not an individual. And that can help with someone feeling defensive or not. And so just because that kind of those dynamics are coming up, I figured I would mention it and just reiterate it as some alternatives to directly intervening.
Yeah,
So thank you all. Yeah.
yeah.
I think we just have a little bit left. I appreciate you all sticking through this with me. So taking
Question.
accountability. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we questioned at one point what the microaggression piece, how does that relate to being a bystander in one of these, you know, heavily bystander to a possible harm? How does that
Mhm.
connect to those kind of situations?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I would say the reason we have microaggressions in here is because they are oftentimes scenarios that come up where harm is being caused. The harm being caused is a microaggression. So we wanted to specifically touch on how microaggressions, and also how they involve bias, implicit or explicit, um, and how our positionality might lead us in a position to either say a microaggression unintentionally or to see one happen to someone else. We wanted to equip participants in the training with ways to intervene. Again, kind of whether it be directly or indirectly using kind of the 5 Ds. Does that make sense? I would say it's more nuanced than maybe some of the situations that you, as an activist group, are in. These
Well,
are like lower level, maybe potentially, for lack of better words.
well, the other thing that just occurred to me as you were explaining is that here I am, a bystander who, sees a need for some intervention and unintentionally commits a microaggression as I am trying to help. That's thinking about that. So yeah. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah. It's all about just trying to build that awareness. So that's why it's a part of the training. Thank you for asking. So moving on to taking accountability. We talked about and worked through the piece of how to help folks that are being harmed. But what if you said something harmful? In that situation, we encourage folks to self-reflect, kind of consider your actions and their impact. Again, even if the intent wasn't to harm, consider the power dynamics with the person that you harmed and accept that you'll mess up. We've all messed up. We'll mess up again as part of being human. And apologize, take responsibility, and acknowledge the harm that you caused, regardless of your intent. And that can be really hard. It can be hard not to become defensive, but you do want to be able to then repair and make amends and work on building trust with that person. And we also acknowledge it's a nonlinear process doing this. And then a very important part of this is changing your behavior and trying not to recommit the same actions, trying to build understanding, and thinking about how you can be more intentional in the future. So just to tie everything together, because we're pretty much finished here. Why should we intervene? We want to support the person being harmed. We want to prevent further harm from occurring, and we want to contribute to a culture of helping in our communities. Thank you all for participating. I knew that we were just about there. If you have any questions, we have a few minutes, so I'm happy to stay and talk if there's additional questions. And we do have a feedback survey that's very short and sweet. We would love to get your feedback. It is anonymous. And I will send a link of it in the chat because QR codes can be finicky sometimes. So yeah, thank you so much for participating. I really appreciated everyone jumping in the chat and working through the scenarios. And I hope that this supports you in your future work as a group. And thank you all for what you do.
And thank you for working with me, your problem child. I really appreciated that. It was lovely. Thank you.
I enjoyed it very much. I always learn new things when I give this presentation. So thank you, Alice. Thanks for sticking around even with the tech difficulties.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
and this was recorded, so I'll make sure to get the recording to you eventually, Joanna. Yeah.
Right.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you so much for
Thanks.
being willing to do this training with us. I'm hoping that all of us came away with one or two insights. I know I certainly did. So thank you so much. And thank you, Lucas, for trying to help all of us with old and cranky computers stay.
Thank you. I'm glad we finally got it figured out.
Yes, thank you, Lucas. And look,
Thank you
okay,
very much.
I made tech mistakes too, so it's totally, I mean, it's different.
I was saying Teams is the enemy here.
Yes, Microsoft and Teams.
Yes.
All right.
All right.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you so much, you guys.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Joanna, can I email you a link to that survey too, if you don't mind sharing it with folks as well? Would that be okay?
That would be great.
All right.
I would definitely do that.
Thank you all so much. You have a good one.
Thank you too.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Lucas.
Thanks,
Bye,
Lucas.
guys.
Thank you.
I'm sorry I had to leave, but that was a call from doctors.